Stephen Beard was the embodiment of the American dream. A self-made millionaire and retired television executive, he had built his wealth and reputation through hard work and determination. His professional success provided him a luxurious life in Austin, Texas, where he resided in a sprawling mansion, a testament to his achievements. However, beneath his polished exterior was a man yearning for companionship after the death of his first wife. Enter Celeste Johnson. In her 30s, Celeste worked as a waitress at a local Austin country club where she first caught Stephen's attention. Strikingly beautiful with an infectious charm, Celeste had a magnetic quality that Stephen, then in his 60s, found irresistible. Their age difference, more than 30 years, did little to dissuade Stephen, who was drawn to Celeste's lively demeanor. For Celeste, the relationship presented an opportunity for financial stability and the chance to escape a tumultuous past. Celeste's life had been marked by hardship. Raised in modest circumstances, she faced a difficult childhood punctuated by instability and emotional strain. By the time she met Stephen, she had already endured multiple failed marriages and struggled to provide for her twin daughters, Jennifer and Christina. Stephen offered her not only security, but also the lavish lifestyle she craved. Their whirlwind romance culminated in marriage in 1995. Stephen spared no expense in ensuring Celeste and her daughters enjoyed the best life had to offer. The family vacationed in exotic locations, indulged in shopping sprees, and enjoyed the comforts of wealth. To those on the outside, it seemed like a fairy tale union. Yet, cracks in the relationship began to show early. Stephen's affection for Celeste was genuine, but her behavior began to raise concerns. Celeste's spending habits were extravagant, even by Stephen's standards. She filled their home with high-end furnishings, designer clothing, and luxury items, often beyond what even Stephen considered reasonable. Her appetite for material goods was insatiable, and Stephen, while generous, started to feel uneasy about the growing financial strain. Beyond money, there were signs of deeper discord. Celeste's temperament was unpredictable. She could be warm and loving one moment, only to lash out with anger or retreat into despondency the next. These mood swings created a tense atmosphere in the household, leaving Stephen to navigate an emotional minefield. Stephen's friends noticed the changes in him. Once a confident and outgoing man, he began to seem withdrawn, burdened by his efforts to keep Celeste happy. His concern for his daughters-in-law also grew as he observed the effects of their mother's volatile behavior on them. Despite these challenges, Stephen remained committed to the marriage, holding on to the hope that he could guide Celeste toward a more stable life. His loyalty and love for her, however, would set the stage for a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. As the honeymoon phase of Stephen and Celeste Beard's marriage faded, the reality of their mismatched personalities and lifestyles came into sharp focus. Stephen had envisioned a life of quiet comfort and companionship, but Celeste's extravagant tendencies and emotional volatility soon overshadowed the idyllic image he had hoped to preserve. Celeste's spending habits grew increasingly reckless. She frequented high-end boutiques and expensive salons, amassing a collection of designer clothes, jewelry, and extravagant home decor. Stephen, who prided himself on financial prudence, despite his wealth, began to worry about the mounting bills. His unease escalated when Celeste made impulsive investments and large purchases without consulting him. While Stephen indulged her whims for a time, he started to push back, leading to heated arguments that revealed the growing rift between them. Underlying their financial disputes was a deeper issue: Celeste's emotional instability. She was prone to mood swings that left Stephen walking on eggshells. At times, she exuded charm and charisma, captivating everyone around her. Other times, she spiraled into fits of anger or despair, isolating herself from her family. These episodes became more frequent, and Stephen began confiding in close friends that he was at a loss for how to manage his wife's erratic behavior. Amid this turmoil, Celeste's twin daughters, Jennifer and Christina, bore the brunt of their mother's instability. Although Stephen tried to provide a sense of normalcy for the girls, They often witnessed their mother's outbursts and erratic decisions. Celeste's relationship with her daughters grew strained as they became teenagers, further complicating the family dynamic. Celeste's mental health issues came to a head in 1999 when she admitted herself to St. David's Pavilion, a mental health facility in Austin. Stephen, despite the tension in their marriage, supported her decision, hoping it would provide the help she needed. However, this chapter in Celeste's life would lead to a connection that would forever change the trajectory of their lives. While at St. David's, Celeste met Tracey Tarleton, another patient at the facility. Tracey, a middle-aged woman struggling with depression and alcoholism, was drawn to Celeste's magnetic personality. The two women quickly formed a bond, finding solace in their shared vulnerabilities. Celeste's charm worked its magic, and Tracey became enamored with her, seeing her as both a confidant and an emotional anchor. Stephen, meanwhile, continued to grapple with the strain on his marriage. He hoped Celeste's time in treatment would bring about positive changes, but he remained wary. The cracks in their relationship had deepened, and though Stephen's love for Celeste endured, his patience was wearing thin. He could not have imagined that the seeds of betrayal had already been planted in the very place where Celeste had gone to seek help. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit halls of St. David's Pavilion, Celeste Beard and Tracey Tarleton first crossed paths. Both women were grappling with their own demons. Celeste, burdened by the growing pressures of her unraveling marriage, and Tracey battling chronic depression and a history of alcoholism. While their backgrounds were vastly different, their shared vulnerability created a bond that would soon spiral into a dangerous obsession. Tracey Tarleton was a well-educated and intelligent woman. She had been a bookstore manager in Austin and was known for her sharp wit and love of literature. Despite her outward accomplishments, Tracey's life had been marred by deep personal struggles. Her battle with alcoholism and depression had led her to St. David's Pavilion in search of stability and healing. Unlike Celeste, whose charisma often masked her inner turmoil, Tracey wore her pain openly, and it was this contrast that seemed to draw them to one another. Celeste's charm worked effortlessly on Tracey. During group therapy sessions, she captivated those around her with stories of her opulent life with Stephen. She painted herself as a misunderstood and trapped woman, a victim of circumstances beyond her control. To Tracey, who longed for connection and purpose, Celeste appeared as a beacon of light in the darkness, a woman in need of rescue. Outside of therapy, the two women spent hours together, sharing intimate details of their lives. Celeste confided in Tracey about her dissatisfaction with her marriage, portraying Stephen as a controlling and cold husband who failed to understand her needs. These narratives, though often exaggerated or false, reinforced Tracey's desire to protect and support Celeste. Over time, their friendship deepened, and the lines between emotional reliance and romantic infatuation began to blur. While Celeste's time at St. David's was relatively short, her connection with Tracey endured beyond the facility's walls. After her discharge, she maintained regular contact with Tracey, visiting her and calling frequently. Their relationship raised eyebrows among those who knew them, particularly Stephen, who grew suspicious of Celeste's increasingly close ties to her new friend. Stephen's unease deepened when he observed the intensity of Celeste and Tracey's interactions. Tracey was a frequent guest at the Beard home, and her presence disrupted the household dynamic. Jennifer and Christina, already strained by their mother's unpredictable behavior, found Tracey's closeness to their family unsettling. To them, she was more than just a friend. She seemed to hold a unique sway over their mother, a role that made Stephen even more apprehensive. Behind closed doors, Celeste and Tracey's relationship took on a darker dimension. Celeste's manipulative tendencies began to surface as she skillfully played on Tracey's insecurities and affection. She painted herself as a victim of an oppressive marriage, implying that freedom and happiness could only be achieved if Stephen were no longer in the picture. Tracey, desperate to please Celeste and fulfill her perceived role as a savior, became entangled in a web of manipulation that would lead her down a perilous path. The seeds of the plot against Stephen were sown during this period, though Tracey herself may not have fully realized the extent of her involvement. For Celeste, however, the narrative was clear. Stephen's wealth and the life insurance policies he held were keys to the independence she craved. To achieve her goals, she needed Tracey's loyalty, and ultimately, her complicity. As the friendship between Celeste and Tracey deepened, so did the cracks in Celeste's marriage. Stephen, unaware of the full extent of their bond, could only watch as his wife drifted further away from him. What began as a chance meeting in a mental health facility was rapidly becoming a dangerous liaison, one that would have devastating consequences for everyone involved. Stephen Beard, growing increasingly uneasy, noticed Tracey's constant presence in their lives. She visited the Beard mansion frequently, often joining family gatherings and inserting herself into Celeste's daily routine. Stephen's suspicions were further fueled by Celeste's erratic behavior. Her late-night phone calls, secretive meetings, and dismissive attitude whenever he questioned her relationship with Tracey. Friends and family noticed the shift in Celeste's demeanor. She seemed emboldened, speaking more freely about her dissatisfaction with Stephen and hinting that drastic changes were on the horizon. Christina and Jennifer, Celeste's twin daughters, grew concerned about their mother's behavior, sensing that something was terribly wrong. Celeste's manipulation escalated to the point where Tracey believed eliminating Stephen was the only way forward. Under Celeste's influence, Tracey became fixated on the idea of protecting the woman she loved, not realizing she was being used as a pawn in Celeste's greater scheme, one fueled by greed and a desire for freedom. As the relationship between Celeste and Tracey deepened, so did the danger looming over Stephen Beard. Unaware of the sinister plot forming behind closed doors, he remained committed to his wife, unaware that her affections had shifted toward something far more dangerous. On the night of October 2nd, 1999, Tracey put the plan into action. Armed with a 20-gauge shotgun, she quietly entered the Beard mansion under the cover of darkness. Stephen was asleep in his bedroom, completely unaware of the danger lurking nearby. As Tracey stood in the dimly lit room, she hesitated, but Celeste's words echoed in her mind. She fired a single shot into Stephen's abdomen, leaving him critically wounded. Despite his injuries, Stephen managed to call 911, his voice trembling as he told the dispatcher, "I've been shot. I think my guts are hanging out." Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, where doctors fought to save his life. He survived the initial attack, but his injuries were severe and left him in a fragile state. At the crime scene, investigators found a spent shotgun shell, evidence that would later tie Tracey to the crime. Meanwhile, Celeste played the role of the distraught wife, maintaining a composed yet concerned demeanor. However, those closest to Stephen, including his stepdaughters, sensed something was amiss. They found Celeste's lack of genuine emotion unsettling, and their suspicions grew. In the following weeks, Stephen endured multiple surgeries and a grueling recovery process, but his condition worsened. On January 22, 2000, Stephen Beard succumbed to a fatal blood clot caused by his injuries. His death transformed the case from an assault to a full-blown homicide investigation. As detectives delved deeper, attention turned to Celeste and Tracey's unusual relationship. Tracey remained loyal, unwilling to implicate Celeste, but investigators uncovered inconsistencies. Witnesses recalled Celeste's frequent complaints about Stephen and her fascination with his fortune. Financial records revealed Celeste's extravagant spending habits and her newfound interest in Stephen's life insurance policy. Despite the mounting suspicion, Celeste continued living her lavish lifestyle, seemingly unaffected by her husband's death. She indulged in shopping sprees, expensive vacations, and even started seeing another man, behavior that further fueled investigators' determination to prove she had orchestrated the crime. However, the turning point in the case would come not from forensic evidence, but from the growing guilt and disillusionment within Tracey herself. Stephen Beard's death in January 2000 escalated the case from attempted murder to homicide, putting detectives under immense pressure to find answers. With no signs of forced entry and Stephen's own 911 call offering little insight into the shooter's identity, investigators turned their focus to those closest to him, particularly his wife, Celeste Beard. Celeste's behavior after Stephen's death raised eyebrows. Instead of mourning, she appeared to revel in her newfound financial freedom. She spent lavishly on luxury items, vacations, and began a new relationship with a man named Cole Johnson, whom she would later marry. Investigators found her actions suspicious, noting how quickly she moved on from the tragedy. The breakthrough in the case came when forensic evidence linked the shotgun shell found at the scene to a weapon purchased by Tracey Tarleton. When police brought Tracey in for questioning, she initially refused to implicate Celeste, claiming she acted alone. But detectives weren't convinced. Tracey's obsession with Celeste was well known, and they suspected she hadn't acted without encouragement. Detectives began piecing together a narrative of manipulation and deceit. Friends of Celeste and Tracey provided testimonies about their unusually close relationship, with some suggesting that Tracey harbored romantic feelings for Celeste. Witnesses reported hearing Celeste complain about Stephen and express a desire for a life free from his control. Meanwhile, Celeste continued to deny any involvement in Stephen's death, insisting that Tracey had acted on her own out of jealousy and obsession. However, financial records told a different story. Celeste had racked up significant debts, and Stephen's multi-million-dollar estate provided her with a convenient escape. Under mounting pressure and growing suspicions, Tracey's mental state deteriorated. The guilt weighed heavily on her, and eventually, after months of investigation, she broke her silence. Tracey admitted that Celeste had manipulated her into believing Stephen was abusive and that his death was the only way for them to be together. With Tracey's confession in hand, authorities arrested Celeste Beard in March 2002. She was charged with capital murder and conspiracy to commit murder, setting the stage for a dramatic trial that would reveal the full extent of Celeste's treachery. With Celeste Beard behind bars, prosecutors built their case against her, focusing on the manipulation and deceit that led to Stephen Beard's murder. The key to their strategy was Tracey Tarleton's confession, which provided chilling details about how Celeste had carefully orchestrated the crime without pulling the trigger herself. In her statement, Tracey described how Celeste had skillfully manipulated her emotions, portraying Stephen as an oppressive figure who needed to be removed for their happiness. Celeste never directly asked Tracey to commit the murder, but she planted the idea through subtle suggestions and constant reinforcement of Stephen's alleged mistreatment. Tracey, hopelessly infatuated, believed she was acting to protect the woman she loved. Investigators also uncovered incriminating phone records, letters, and witness testimonies that revealed Celeste's pattern of manipulation. Friends and family recounted how Celeste often spoke about Stephen's wealth and her dissatisfaction with their marriage. Her twin daughters, Jennifer and Christina, provided crucial testimony, claiming their mother had displayed little emotion after Stephen's death and had quickly moved on with her life. Prosecutors argued that Celeste's extravagant lifestyle was her primary motive. They presented evidence showing how she had spent excessively on luxury items and had become increasingly frustrated with Stephen's attempts to rein in her spending. The life insurance policy, worth millions, was a powerful incentive to eliminate Stephen from the picture. Meanwhile, Celeste maintained her innocence, insisting that Tracey acted alone out of jealousy. She claimed that Tracey had become obsessed with her and concocted the murder plan independently. Celeste's defense attorneys attempted to discredit Tracey's testimony, highlighting her history of mental health struggles and her desire to win Celeste's affection at any cost. Despite the defense's efforts, the weight of the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors portrayed Celeste as a master manipulator who exploited Tracey's emotional vulnerabilities to achieve her own selfish goals. The trial was set to become a high-profile event, with the public eager to see whether Celeste's charm could once again save her from the consequences of her actions. As the trial date approached, Celeste's once glamorous life crumbled around her. The woman who had once lived in luxury and control was now facing the harsh reality of a murder charge that could put her behind bars for life. In March 2003, Celeste Beard's highly anticipated trial began in Austin, Texas. The courtroom was packed with journalists, spectators, and Stephen Beard's grieving family, all eager to see whether the prosecution could prove Celeste was the mastermind behind his murder. The prosecution presented a compelling case, portraying Celeste as a manipulative and greedy woman who used Tracey Tarleton's love and devotion to orchestrate the killing. Their strategy hinged on Tracey's testimony, which detailed how Celeste had slowly convinced her that Stephen's death was necessary. Tracey took the stand, and with a mix of regret and emotion, described how Celeste had played with her emotions, promising a future together while subtly planting the idea of murder in her mind. Supporting Tracey's account were Celeste's own twin daughters, Jennifer and Christina. They testified against their mother, recounting how she showed little remorse after Stephen's death and quickly moved on with a new man. They also revealed that Celeste often spoke about Stephen in derogatory ways and mentioned how much simpler life would be without him. Their testimony painted Celeste as cold and calculating, more interested in wealth and freedom than family. Prosecutors also introduced financial evidence showing that Celeste had been living beyond her means and was deeply in debt. They argued that Stephen's multi-million-dollar estate and life insurance policy were the driving forces behind her actions. Celeste's lavish spending, shopping sprees, expensive vacations, and plans to remodel the mansion were highlighted as clear indicators of motive. Celeste's defense team tried to counter the prosecution's narrative by portraying Tracey as a mentally unstable woman who acted alone out of unrequited love. They argued that Celeste never asked Tracey to kill Stephen, and that Tracey had misinterpreted Celeste's words due to her fragile mental state. The defense attempted to shift blame, suggesting that Tracey's obsession drove her to commit the crime without Celeste's involvement. However, Celeste's behavior during the trial didn't help her case. She appeared unemotional and indifferent, further reinforcing the prosecution's portrayal of her as manipulative and self-centered. The jury, captivated by the testimonies and evidence, was left to decide whether Celeste was a grieving widow or a cunning murderer. After several days of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict: guilty. Celeste Beard was convicted of capital murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. The verdict brought a sense of closure to Stephen Beard's family, who had long suspected Celeste's involvement. As Celeste was led out of the courtroom, the reality of her situation finally seemed to sink in. Her glamorous life had come to an end, and she now faced decades behind bars. Meanwhile, Tracey Tarleton, having taken a plea deal in exchange for her testimony, was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving a portion of her sentence. The trial had exposed a tale of manipulation, greed, and betrayal that shocked the public and became a cautionary tale about the destructive power of obsession and deceit. If you have finished watching, you are a real fan of true crime. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notifications, and put the like. See you in the next video.